Really the only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the rest, you mute them. Turning it up, these numbers are loud. Peeping this game from a nimbus is wild. Making it rain while I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bill, I'm the best till into the next well. Guess I got next still. Best bill, I'm the best till into the next well. Guess I got next still. Hey, really the only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the rest.
And welcome in to the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast and live stream. I'm Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. Tonight, Mock Draft Monday. That's right, baby. Third week in a row, we're doing the Mock Draft Monday. You thought you would get away from me in the mock draft streets, but no, tonight we are going to jump into the PFF mock draft simulator, and we're going to see where PFF has done their little magic in updating their rankings and find out which players are going to be in those coveted first, second, and third rounds of the NFL rookie draft based on, of course, this mock draft. And I've used the regular default settings for PFF, so we're not going to get anything pretty crazy or wonky. And I found out why it didn't work last week, why we only got 2 rounds. It was because PFF was in the middle of doing their updates for their rankings, and PFF did drop their rookie review guide. So if you have a subscription there, you can check it out. I think you can download it if you have $10 as well, if you're not subscribed. But nevertheless, I took a look over the long weekend, and it was nothing I didn't know. There were general rounds that weren't surprising for a variety of prospects, and given that we had done these exercises together over the last few weeks, there weren't really any surprises. There are going to be some interesting ranges of players. I'm interested in seeing where Jalen Hyatt goes. I've seen Lance Zierlein put him as the first wide receiver off the board in his mock draft. But PFF has him in the third round, or graded as a third round wide receiver. So I'm interested in seeing where he's going to end up in this particular mock draft. And I'm also excited because this is the second to last mock draft Monday that I will do before we get the NFL Combine. And when we get the NFL Combine, we're going to get a lot of data, a lot more interesting data that's going to move the needle a little bit here or there for players. We'll find out if there are any real speedsters, what their numbers exactly are. But also, this is the time where we get information about players who were not prepared for the Combine. And that should be a red flag for us. One of them coming from last year, if we remember, Kyren Williams was a possible second or third round draft pick, maybe fourth round, but because he ran a sub 10th percentile 40-yard dash, ended up falling to the 5th round and beyond to the LA Rams. And the LA Rams have an affinity for Notre Dame players. So it wasn't surprising that Sean McVay took him at that spot, but that explains why, we see these rookies fall off as these single digit percentile scores. Or if you see players jump into the 90th percentile in the NFL Combine for certain measurables, that's going to shift stock of players. But by and large, the NFL Combine mostly confirms what you see on film. It gives data to a particular player's speed. So we have this week's Mock Draft Monday and next week's Mock Draft Monday, and then we will get the NFL Combine, and that's going to shake some things up, I think, a little bit for our Mock Draft Monday series. And after the NFL Draft, I'll go into some Mock Draft Mondays of redraft and other types of strategies and formats. But for right now, we're going to jump into a Mock Draft Monday. So if you're not familiar with PFFs, go on to pff.com and you can find their mock draft simulator. You can just search it right there. And you can do a variety of things. For those who are familiar with the tool, should be pretty fun and easy to do. But for those who are not familiar, you can select whichever team you would like to mock draft as. and how many rounds. And for this particular mock draft, I'm only interested in the mostly fantasy relevant players, and those most significantly happen in rounds 1 through 4. Can we have some fantasy darlings rounds 5 and beyond? Absolutely. Those happen. But I am most interested in the draft capital of the players that are projected or in this draft mocked to be in the top 4 rounds. And as I mentioned before, I don't think there's any crazy settings for today. There's less care for positional value. There's more care for drafting for needs for these teams, and less randomness. Obviously not perfectly zero randomness, but those are the defaults for PFF. And as I said, 4 rounds. I'm going to keep it slow once again, because that's how we build things up here on the Best Bell Fantasy Football podcast and live stream. And of course, if you're new to the live stream, you're not familiar with it, I do a variety of fantasy content, and that includes mock drafts. I'll do some best ball drafts. I upload some shorts. I put up a bunch of YouTube shorts today, so check those out. Recapping some of the drafts that I had done and some player takes that I had. And then I also will be doing player profiles, and then hopefully some rookie profiles. And I'm getting a product out to y'all here in the next couple months. I'm really, really excited about that. You'll be able to hopefully find that on Amazon once it gets dropped. So really excited for that. And of course, these mock drafts, these drafts. So let's jump into it. Enter the draft. And I like drafting as the Houston Texans because it's pretty simple. The Texans need a lot of things. So we're going to jump in as the Texans. Yeah, and Jose's saying, let's see what running backs and wide receivers get drafted. Absolutely. I am very interested in what wide receivers and running backs get drafted in this mock draft. It's very, very easy to draft as the Texans because they need a lot of things. They need quarterback. They need wide receiver. They need defensive linemen. They need to stop the run. They need lots of things. And the thing too is if you get into those rounds 5, 6, and 7s, you're just taking dart throws. And I haven't researched, the round 6 and 7 darlings because frankly, not a lot of people have at this point. So we're hyper fixated on those players that will most likely be fantasy relevant, but it will be worth looking at when we get draft capital of those players. Nevertheless, let's kick it off. Let's get it started, as the Black Eyed Peas like to say. Okay, Jalen Carter in this mock draft goes off at 1 for the Chicago Bears defensive interior. I'm drafting Bryce Young, smashing Bryce Young every single time. If I'm the Houston Texans, that's a franchise-altering quarterback. He just has so many intangibles. He's mobile. He's got many of the it factors that you like. He's won the Heisman. Like, he's got things to his resume that you can't ignore. Okay, so let's pause here and recap. We just got through 8 picks, even though it was a slow draft. Will Levis in this mock draft goes off at 4. Quentin Johnson, holy buckets, goes off at 5. If Quentin Johnson gets top 5 draft capital, and I think he got top 10 draft capital in the last mock draft that I did live here on the Best Bell Fantasy Football podcast and live stream. If he gets top 5 draft capital, holy guacamole. And, as for those who are familiar with this mock draft, I am less concerned about landing spot, because landing spot could be, it could be Seattle. It could be the Lions. It could be the Raiders. It could be the Falcons. Like, does the difference between top 5 and top 8 draft capital for a wide receiver really matter? No, but the fact that Quentin Johnson is not only top 10, but top 5 in this mock, wow. Okay. And I don't think that Seattle needs wide receiver help. I don't think that is at the top of their priorities, but maybe they're looking for a Tyler Lockett successor. That's a possibility. So Quentin Johnson getting top 5 draft capital should be earth-shattering for many of us in the fantasy community, but for where he's being drafted right now, because based on where I'm looking, Quentin Johnson is currently being drafted. Oh, he's not even, that's not registering for Underdog Fantasy. Nevertheless, Oh, yes, there we go. Okay, so it's updated. Quentin Johnson is being drafted as the wide receiver 41 right now on Underdog, which if he goes as a top 5 wide receiver in this NFL draft, oh man, you're getting a huge value. So I think any first round wide receiver should be a smash draft if they are outside the top 36 of wide receiver. We saw Drake London last year be, I think it was ADP wide receiver 35 or 36 when it was all said and done. So to get Quentin Johnson as a top 5 pick, that would be massive for the fantasy football streets. And then we see CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson go off at picks 7 and 8. I've consistently seen Anthony Richardson being picked in the top 10 in these mock drafts. Would not surprise me at all if he goes to the Raiders or the Falcons, or if he's there for the Panthers, like the Panthers might jump up and get him. I also wonder, and this is just an aside, we haven't gotten to the Panthers pick yet, but Matt Corral is still rostered. And there was a lot of love for Matt Corral in the pre-draft process. He got 3rd round draft capital, which is not a 0. It's not encouraging for your fantasy outlook, but there was a lot of pre-draft love for Matt Corral. And Corral lost the entire season due to a foot injury. I think that the Carolina Panthers are going to give him a long, hard look there. And of course, bring in some competition, no doubt. I don't think they're just going to hand the reins over to Matt Corral. But I think that if you're taking like a dart throw quarterback to be fantasy relevant for this year, Matt Corral might be an eyebrow raise. Okay. Nevertheless, let's see what the Carolina Panthers do here if they go quarterback or something else. Tyree Wilson, edge rusher at Texas Tech. Brian Branch from Alabama. Paris Johnson from Ohio State goes off to Tennessee. And then I'm on the clock as the Houston Texans. And the Texans, as I said, need pretty much everything. They need to stop the run. So we're going to go Lucas Van Ness here at 12 as an edge rusher. Christian Gonzalez to the Jets, cornerback. Cansey out of Pittsburgh. Miles Murphy for Clemson to Green Bay. Joey Porter Jr. to Washington. Jordan Addison goes to Pittsburgh, top 17 pick in this draft. Jordan Addison fitting into a mid-pack first round wide receiver, and that's where he's been consistently mocked in the first round. So I think that's where he's going to go. And if he goes anywhere to, like, I don't think Washington is particularly interested in getting wide receivers with having Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, and they have De'Ami Brown as well as a wide receiver 4, who's not a bad wide receiver 4, very, very speedy guy. I think he was like a 3rd or 5th round draft capital wide receiver from a couple of years ago, who was teammates with Sam Howell back at UNC. So I don't think Washington would be interested in Addison. It would be a shame if the Packers took Addison. Like, hey, we'll see Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is leaving or staying, but it would be a shame if the Packers finally drafted a first round wide receiver and Aaron Rodgers leaves. But maybe they're going to give some help to Jordan Love. Nevertheless, Jordan Addison, 17th in this mock draft. Let's see who the Lions take at 18. A tackle, Brian Bryce from Clemson for the Bucks. Jones out of Georgia to the Seahawks again. Smith and Jigba, another first round draft capital wide receiver to the Baltimore Ravens. I've seen him mocked, between 20 and 28 or so, somewhere in that range. And I think that that's where he's going to end up again. Smith and Jigba lost most of the 2022 season due to the hamstring injury, but the Baltimore Ravens are in a lot of need for support from the target share security, for lack of a better term. Like, it's clear that the coaching staff was not ready to give Rashad Bateman a full-time role as a sophomore player. He was only playing like 60-something% of the snaps and running those routes for the Ravens, even when he was healthy. So they need another player outside of Mark Andrews to be a full-time wide receiver. It's not going to be Devin Duvernay or James Proche. So Jackson Smith and Jigba would be a nice fit for the Baltimore Ravens. They don't have a slot receiver. And with how Smith and Jigba is dynamic down the field, allows Andrews to still operate close to the line of scrimmage and down the middle and still stretch the field here and there. I think that would be a nice compliment, Smith and Jigba out of the slot. So still, first-round draft capital wide receiver. I like that for the Ravens. And I like that for Jackson Smith and Jigba's fantasy value. Zay Flowers immediately goes off after Smith and Jigba. Flowers also getting mocked here in the first round. There's been a lot of chatter about Flowers being, top 12, top 15 draft pick and the first wide receiver off the board. The Vikings, I think, do need another wide receiver outside of Justin Jefferson. There's been some chatter about Zay Flowers being an outside wide receiver, and that would be real nice if Flowers can be outside and then Jefferson can move either to the slot or opposite Flowers. I know Flowers is not this big alpha, prototypical alpha type, but many people have comped him to the size and frame of an Antonio Brown, who will command targets. So Zay Flowers to the Vikings, I wouldn't hate that. That's not a high need, but we did see Adam Thielen really fall off this year from a fantasy perspective, and getting Zay Flowers as the replacement to Adam Thielen, I wouldn't hate that. I would not hate that. All right, we'll see who the Jacksonville Jaguars go with. Yep, an edge rusher they need to lock down their defense. That was clear. Bijan Robinson going at 25 to the New York Giants. I'm assuming that this means that the Giants are not going to re-sign Saquon Barkley and instead go with Bijan Robinson. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. There's been rumors right now that Daniel Jones is asking for $45 million a year and Jalen Hurts is only supposed to get $50 million. Like, I'm not there. I'm not there. I know it's a lot of fantasy analysts have expressed their discontent with the $45 million ask, but if that's what the market's going to pay, then that's what they're going to pay. But also the Giants, if that's the price tag for getting Daniel Jones locked down, maybe they look elsewhere. Frankly. And they would also look elsewhere for Saquon Barkley, who reportedly is far away in the price of the contract talks. So Bijan Robinson as a Saquon Barkley replacement, I don't think answers that question of who's going to be the quarterback. And it certainly doesn't address the need at wide receiver. So I'm not a huge fan of this mock draft giving Bijan Robinson to the New York Giants. Let's keep her moving, though. We're going to get through 4 rounds today. Dalton Kincaid is the first tight end off the board. And once again, this is something that is not new or should not be new to you. Dalton Kincaid as the first tight end off the board. Dalton Schultz, who was franchise tagged, may or may not return. And if he doesn't return, Dalton Kincaid, the best graded tight end, receiving tight end in the NCAA last season, will be a very, very nice pick. And he's been consistently getting that back end first round draft capital in these mocks. I've been very interested to see Dalton Kincaid all but forgotten, all but lost in like the drafters fantasy streets and on Underdog as well. Kincaid tight end 29 on Underdog. And I think that's like a fine draft capital. Like if you're going 0 tight end and you've decided, you know what, I'm not going to take any shots on tight ends. Usually rookie tight ends don't pan out. But if a team drafts Dalton Kincaid in the first round, they're going to probably be using him. And let's be honest. Like if there's going to be a team who would use their tight end, it's going to be Dallas. And we've seen that historically. Dallas is willing to use the tight ends in fantasy useful ways. So Dalton Kincaid getting first round draft capital, that would be really, really nice. And for him going as tight end 29 is also going to be very nice in Underdog. And he's going even later even later on Drafters Fantasy. So keep those in mind as you're doing these early 2023 best ball drafts. Let's keep her moving. The Cincinnati Bengals take Andre Carter, edge rusher out of Army. Tanner McKee once again gets this very late first-round draft capital to the New Orleans Saints. Right now, Derek Carr is a free agent. He can sign with whomever he pleases. He just visited the New York Jets, reportedly, and so we'll see if Tanner McKee, who's been getting a little more pre-draft buzz as of late, does end up landing in New Orleans. I mean, I need to do more research on Tanner McKee, but there's been a lot of, like, PFF, I think, put him at a Kerry Collins comp, which is not a bad one, frankly. If you're looking for a future quarterback, Tanner McKee, he's projected to get this late first round, early second round of draft capital. And for the Saints who are hungry for a quarterback, and if they miss out on Derek Carr and don't plan on using Jameis Winston, Tanner McKee once again is mocked here to the Saints. Let's keep her moving. Michael Mayer goes to the Philadelphia Eagles. I would not like that landing spot for the Dallas Goedert truthers out there. I was just talking about Dallas Goedert being a nice little smash, but if Michael Mayer goes there, that would stink. Ojulari is usually my pick here. But the Houston Texans need a lot of things. They need a tight end as well. Luke Musgrave is consistently getting this late first round, early second round draft capital. They need the tight end, so I went that way. And we see some edge rushers and a cornerback and a guard go off. And a defensive interior, Madsey Smith out of Michigan, Henley from Washington State. All right, there we go. We got our other wide receiver. Nathaniel Dell gets top 40 wide receiver draft capital. Yeah, top 39 pick in this mock draft. Once again, we see Nathaniel Dell get there. And if we look at, like, the landing spot for Nathaniel Dell, it's DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall, Laviska Shenault, and like, who else for Carolina? Carolina sneakily needs a wide receiver too to support DJ Moore and protect DJ Moore. Now, whether it's Nathaniel Dell or another wide receiver, that significant of draft capital, top 40 pick in the NFL draft, is going to matter for Nathaniel Dell's immediate involvement. So we'll see if he gets that draft capital, where his landing spot is. I mean, he could end up being drafted by the Raiders, right? And paired with their early quarterback. Or if the Seahawks decide to not go with a wide receiver in the first round and instead go with a round 2 wide receiver, that may be a pick, Nathaniel Dell. So we'll keep that in mind. Dell is consistently getting mocked in those top 40. All right, we'll keep moving. The Saints are on the clock, and they go with the cornerback. The Titans are up, an edge rusher out of Kansas State. All right, Josh Downs. Ooh, this allows me to talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones. If the Browns select Josh Downs in round 2 of this draft, of the NFL draft, then Donovan Peoples-Jones is in the danger zone, honestly. I think he's in the danger zone right now. Like, I don't know why he's going at wide receiver 52. He should be in the wide receiver 60s plus. And heck, he was being drafted even in the wide receiver mid 40s all of a couple weeks ago. And I think things have cooled off for Donovan Peoples-Jones. But if you pair Josh Downs, who is an early declare, electric player, one of the highest graded PFF wide receivers in the NCAA last year, pairing him with Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper, that could prove dangerous and also relegate Donovan Peoples-Jones to no more than just a big play deep threat. Peoples-Jones was not a good wide receiver last year. He was bottom 5 in PFF receiving grade among wide receivers who had 80 or more targets. So getting Josh Downs to the Cleveland Browns would nerf that Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver 52 right now on Underdog Fantasy. So no, I like the landing spot for Downs. I would not like it for Donovan Peoples-Jones. And that's why I also think that Donovan Peoples-Jones is really, really fragile. Find another more high upside wide receiver. Like, let me see if I can find another wide receiver going in that range. So wide receiver 48, Jacoby Myers. 49 is Juju. 50 is Jalen Hyatt. 51 is Mooney. Zay Jones is at 53. Josh Downs is at 54. Michael Thomas at wide receiver 58. Like, give me all of those players over Donovan Peoples-Jones at this point. So that Donovan Peoples-Jones is a fade for me going for 2023. That's where I'm at right now. Okay, let's keep moving on. Josh Downs gets selected pick 42, a little bit lower than what I have seen in mock drafts as of late. So maybe we should expect more mid second round draft capital for Downs, but let's see who else comes off the board at these spots for fantasy purposes. Okay, we see some guards and cornerbacks go off, defensive interior. Okay, another edge rusher out of Bowling Green. TCU cornerback off the board. Syracuse tackle off the board. Bergeron. Simpson out of Clemson goes off the board. All right, let's pause. Kayshon Boutte going off at wide receiver. I don't know which wide receiver this is, but mid second round pick to the Detroit Lions. And remember, this is the pick that the Lions traded to get in the TJ Hawkinson deal. Now, the Lions don't have much of a, I mean, they've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, but St. Brown can win on the outside and the inside. So if they go Kayshon Boutte, right, we'll see where they're all going to line up. I wonder, though, whether this is also going to affect, DJ Chark. If the Lions select a Kayshon Boutte type of wide receiver, then that all but guarantees that DJ Chark is not returning to the Lions in 2023. Or at least if they don't re-sign DJ Chark, it's going to signal that the Lions are going to go after a wide receiver in the draft. I think that's how it's going to work, because free agency happens in mid-March, and then this draft happens in late April. So I think we will know. The Lions have been very deliberate and clear about the direction of their team. They've been very, as I said, deliberate, intentional about their strategy. They went about trading TJ Hawkinson. They drafted Jamison Williams. They signed DJ Chark. They could have signed a variety of wide receivers, but they didn't, because they knew the role of Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I think they will telegraph to us their intentions for next year about what they do with DJ Chark. DJ Chark is going to be the interesting play. Okay, let's keep her rolling. Kayshon Boutte going mid-second round seems to be pretty consistent. And let's see who the Jaguars take. A center out of Minnesota. All right, Jahmyr Gibbs gets second-round draft capital. And Jahmyr Gibbs, this is consistent. I'm seeing second-round draft capital for Jahmyr Gibbs. This is a little bit later than I'm used to, but Gibbs is getting a lot of positive hype in the Twitter streets, in the Bird app. So this obviously wouldn't make any sense, because if you look earlier, if you were paying attention earlier, the New York Giants selected Bijan Robinson in the first round, so they're not going to take Jahmyr Gibbs as well. This is, as I said, a mock draft simulator. So there are going to be mistakes that the mock draft is going to make, but getting a late second round draft capital is going to be just fine for Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs seems to be the consensus running back 2 in this draft class. Clearly a tier below Bijan Robinson, but it depends on who is going to get Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe it's Gibbs going to the Buffalo Bills. Maybe it's Jahmyr Gibbs going to Buffalo or to the Cincinnati Bengals. Maybe it's Jahmyr Gibbs going to Carolina. in the second round? I don't know. Probably not. Or maybe it's Philadelphia getting a running back. Nevertheless, it's going to be very interesting. I think the same phenomenon with what happens in the first round could happen in the second round, because we see a lot of running back could be needy teams in the back end of the rounds of these drafts that could target the Bijan Robinsons or Jahmyr Gibbs of the world and fulfill that need and get their running back of the future. So I don't think he goes to the Giants, but I could see him Buffalo or Cincinnati. Let's keep her moving. We're almost halfway done. Laporta out of Iowa goes to Dallas. Once again, I talked about how Dallas is already drafted Kincaid. So back end of the second round, Sam Laporta. All right, Jalen Hyatt gets back end of the second round wide receiver draft cap, pick 62. Jalen Hyatt. And Hyatt has a lot of speed, but how good of a route runner is he is going to be the massive question. Teams are going to see him jump off the board, which is why I think that he has a chance to move into the back end of the first round, a high end of the second round, if Hyatt performs well at the combine. If he runs like a 4.29 or lower in the 4.2s, we could see Jalen Hyatt getting that speed hype that could be good or bad for fantasy. The problem is we don't want like a Mecole Hardman speed. We want Will Fuller speed. We want Jamison Williams speed. We want more refined route runner. And I think that teams are going to be particularly looking particularly close at whether Jalen Hyatt can make some of the cuts and routes in that combine practice in preparation for what he's going to have to do at the NFL level. So Jalen Hyatt getting back end second round draft capital is firmly keeping him in that eyebrow raise for fantasy. But you should not be banking on him as like a wide receiver 3 for you in these drafts. Like if you're punting wide receiver, Jalen Hyatt still isn't the type of wide receiver you want to be taking shots on. You know, you want to be waiting a little bit longer, hoping that he's more like your wide receiver 5 or 6 in your drafts. And right now, Jalen Hyatt is going as the wide receiver 50. So round 12. And that should be about right for you. Let's keep her moving. And of course, if you find all of this helpful and you're new to the YouTube channel, make sure you hit that red subscribe button. It's really, really helpful for the channel to continue to grow, especially this off season as we're talking fantasy relevance. Okay, man, oh man, this is a tough spot because we're looking at some of the ADPs and Jack Campbell is hanging out there. Mike Morris is hanging out there. Canal Benton out of Wisconsin's hanging out there. Charbonnet is getting early third round, late second round draft capital. I'm not going to take Charbonnet because, look, the Houston Texans are probably not going to invest very heavily in their running back, so I doubt that they're going to take an early round 3 back. But Charbonnet hanging around there, maybe he goes instead to the Cardinals or the Broncos. The Broncos could take a running back at this spot. And with Javonte Williams expected to miss some time, or at least like we have concerns that Javonte Williams is not going to be ready for week 1, it would be in the Broncos' best interest to get another capable running back in there. We'll see whether that happens or not, but them having 2 picks in the third round could open them up to addressing that, especially given they have a solid defense and they need they're okay at wide receivers, Sutton and Hamler and Jerry Jeudy, of course. And then I think they also who's coming back from. There's another wide receiver. Why am I blanking? He just tore his ACL. Nevertheless, let's keep her rolling. I think that we're going to go with let's see. They need a center, right? Or defensive interior. Yeah, Keenal Benton. Let's draft Keenal Benton at that spot. Defensive interior. Stop the run. Charbonnet goes to the Cardinals. That would be the obvious James Conner successor. Broncos go cornerback and tackle back-to-back there. Jack Campbell goes off the board for the Rams. Darius Rush, cornerback for South Carolina. Darnell Washington goes to the Saints. That would really nip Taysom Hill and Juwan Johnson in the bud. If Darnell Washington gets third-round draft capital, Washington, I think, had a 77 PFF receiving grade, so respectable receiving grade, and he was very much downfield threat. So Darnell Washington, big dude. And if he goes to the Saints, that would be a real eyebrow raise for the role security for not only Hill, but also Juwan Johnson. All right, so the Texans are back on the clock, and this is the pick that they get from Cleveland. We'll need some other support as well. Jamie Robinson out of Florida State is the pick there. Keely Ringo, cornerback. Rashee Rice gets third-round draft capital for the Atlanta Falcons, who do need a second wide receiver behind Drake London. We just saw, let's pause for a second. We just saw two running backs go off the board. Kane out of Texas A&M and Dwayne McBride. Dwayne McBride, baby. I'd love to see it. You love to see it. And I will just, every time that Dwayne McBride is drafted, I'm putting up my Dwayne McBride, no matter what sheet. Dwayne McBride, no matter what, has jumped up from the back end of the fourth round in these mock drafts to now mid-third round draft capital. I'm here for it. Give me all the Dwayne McBride. Dude was an absolute baller at UAB. And I don't care if I guess he goes to the Packers in this mock draft, whatever. But I'm here for it. I am here for it. Go Pack, go. Even though they just re-signed. They chose not to cut Aaron Jones. Let's keep her rolling, though. Kane and McBride goes off picks 77 and 78. You see linebackers, tackles, and safeties. Michael Wilson from Stanford goes off. Okay, and Michael Wilson, let's talk about him. Clearly ascending in PFF grade from 21 to 22, only played in 15 collegiate games over the last 3 years. That's a little concerning. A 72 PFF receiving grade is also not like a wow factor for me. But he averaged over 70 yards per game, 15 yards per reception. I mean, if he's getting third round draft capital, you gotta be, a little bit more interested in that. Wow, he's jumped up significantly in these mock drafts. Okay. And he jumped literally just in the past 2 weeks from like 200th overall to in the top 80 or so, or 80th percentile, or 80. Yeah. 80 overall. Wow. Michael Wilson. I'm going to have to do more research with him, but 14% of the time being drafted by Green Bay, 11th by the New York Giants. Shoot. All right. We're going to look more into Michael Wilson. Yeah, 6'2", 209, 76th on PFF's big board rank. That's big news. And no analysis quite yet provided by PFF. But cool that we see Michael Wilson now drafted by the Bucs, who could lose Chris Godwin. That is eyebrow raising. Michael Wilson, this is the first time I'm seeing him in the first 3 rounds of any of the mock drafts. So I'm here for learning along with you about these deeper players that are now gaining some traction. Let's resume the draft as we move forward into the middle of the third round. See Derek Hall out of Auburn go off. Jaden Reed gets third round draft capital in this mock draft out of Michigan State. Reed had an off year last year, only a 70.4 PFF grade, 2021, 82.2. So clearly a drop there. And I like also looking at the grades by game. And it's concerning to me that he had his best games like in the first half of the season, really. And then struggled, especially against Michigan. I mean, Ohio State got crunched, but those are some concerns. 1.83 yards per route run in college is not great. 8.3% drop rate. That's also not good. So, okay, yeah, we've seen some mock drafts really jump up for him. Consistently in the third round since over the last couple weeks. So Jaden Reed, another player that we should be keeping our eyes on now that we've seen some significant stock jump as of late. So Jaden Reed, third round pick, going to the Chargers. Parker Washington also going to the Baltimore Ravens in the third round. Also got worse from 21 to 22 in PFF receiving grade. He played his best game against Ohio State near the end, but didn't do well against Maryland. This is certainly another player that I have some eyebrow raises about his trends. We've seen some drops. Yeah, I had seen him pretty comfortably in that second round. Now Parker Washington, now in that back end of the third round, that's more concerning to me as we're taking this first look. Yeah, so there are a couple things they add that PFF adds about him. He's 5'10", 215. It dropped to 86 in their big board rank. Yeah, if he's going to play in the slot, he's like a big power slot, and him dropping in ADP this significantly, I mean, we've got to have a few concerns. I have taken a little bit of Parker Washington here and there, but if he gets back in third round draft capital, he might be Josh Palmer, and Palmer really struggled to access ceiling with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen there. So Parker Washington is fantasy relevant. He's going to have to be the clear number 2 on the team that drafts him, or else he could get just dusted. All right, let's keep rolling, and we'll talk about some more players as we go through the draft. We're going to finish this third round, and then we'll go into the fourth round. Tank Bigsby goes off in the third round, right? Bigsby drafted by the Giants yet again. So Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and Tank Bigsby all get drafted by the Giants in this mock draft. But as I mentioned at the top of the draft, I'm less concerned about the landing spot and more concerned about the draft capital projected. And Tank Bigsby consistently in the 80s of PFF rushing grade, overall grade, 90.4 rushing grade in 2022. That was extremely high. He didn't fare very well against Bama or LSU or Georgia. Had his best game in the first week of the season. And then we'll also see that his trend is significantly down. So let's not get too carried away with Tank Bigsby. He might be even into the fourth round by the time we get to the end of April. Okay, the Cowboys are on the clock. They go with linebacker Drew Sanders out of Arkansas, J.L. Skinner of Boise State for Buffalo, Ja'Cory Bennett, cornerback out of Maryland, Colby Wooden, edge out of Alabama, goes to Carolina. Kendre Miller goes to the Chiefs here in the back end of the third round. And we see 88.5 rushing grade for 2022. Zone grade, it was fine. Elusive rating was fantastic. Gap grade was good. Yards after contact per attempt was excellent. 3.64 is excellent. And he carried the load, right, at TCU. Almost 1,400 rushing yards on 224 attempts. Not much of a target hog out of the backfield, but 16 receptions, 22 targets. And we've seen just a little bit of a jump here to the back end of the third round instead of the fourth round where we had seen him over the last few weeks. I like these trends. Okay. Good. So yes, we're expecting him that he will get back end third round draft capital, Kendre Miller. Let's keep her rolling. Linebacker of Tulane goes to Washington. North Dakota State tackle goes to the Browns. Louisville cornerback goes to San Francisco. And let's pause here for a second. A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest goes to the Giants. And A.T. Perry, the trend has been downward a little bit. Before we had seen Perry pretty clearly in that back end of the second round. And now we're seeing him barely skirting with day 2 draft capital. Certainly a more concerning play. 205, 6'5", depends on what he weighs in at the combine. But a redshirt junior, 23 years old. At 23, like some of these wide receivers coming into the draft can't even drink alcohol legally in the United States. And A.T. Perry is 23. He'll be probably near 24 by the time the season starts. But another player who's getting a lot of hype lately is Tyjae Spears. And Spears clearly jumps up from 2021 to 2022. 90.2 overall grade, 90.6 rush grade. Elusive rating is phenomenal, and that was on display at the Senior Bowl. His trends jumping up significantly. He was getting round 4, round 5 draft capital pretty clearly, and then we insert Senior Bowl right here, and then boom, we see Tyjae Spears sneak into some of these third rounds. I think he could fit into like that Tyler Algier type, that if he falls on the right team, we could see Tyjae Spears be fantasy relevant in his rookie season. All right, we just finished up the third round. Tucker Kraft goes to San Francisco, tight end in the third round. And now the Texans are on the clock again. Hendon Hooker being available here this late is certainly eyebrow raising. There's an old saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks, but I'm not going to be the one to draft 2 quarterbacks in this mock draft. I do really like Hendon Hooker, though. There's a lot of green flags for me. There are a couple red flags for sure, but there's some green flags, and I think coming off the ACL tear, like that shouldn't be a reason teams should be scared off. They should be eyebrow raising for other reasons, but not Hendon Hooker's ACL tear. He will work his way back. He'll get the NFL care that he needs. And even if he's not ready in year 1, we could see him be on a team where they'll have to use him in the second half of the season. So Hendon Hooker, I hope he gets a good landing spot. I really, really do. I'm rooting for the kid. All right. I'm rooting for the kid. Hendon Hooker is... He's 25, right? I'm only like 5 or 6 years older than him, but 25 years old. Hendon Hooker. We're going to take instead Isaiah McGuire. We'll keep her moving here. We'll see if the Cardinals take Cedric Tillman. That could be a nice wide receiver support there. AJ Green and his target share is gone. DeAndre Hopkins is on the trade block. It could be Rondell Moore. Okay, getting a lot of love. Okay, so we see Cedric Tillman. We'll see that Tillman's trends have kind of leveled out a little bit. He jumped back at the beginning of January and has dropped a little bit. Okay, clearly not one of the elite receiving wide receivers during his time, but he was dealing with injury during the season. Yeah, 2.9 yards after the catch per reception. Not outstanding. There's certainly some yellow flags with Cedric Tillman's profile. If he can get day 2 draft capital, that would be nice, but I'm not holding my breath for it. And then we also see another player go off the board, Tyler Scott. Okay, Scott is 73 receiving grade, which is decent. His yards per route run was respectable. But yeah, so still, like, there's reasons why these guys are going in the 4th round. Like, you're not going out of your way to draft Tyler Scott in your best ball leagues until we get confirmed draft capital. Jalen Moreno Cropper, I've seen him get 3rd round draft capital. Yeah, but he's dropped as of late. So he was consistently getting back end of the 3rd round. And that's what I'd seen over the last couple weeks. And now he's getting this 4th round draft capital. I think it will matter to the players like Moreno Cropper or Tyler Scott or even Cedric Tillman. If some of them can sneak into the 3rd round, that would mean a team is prioritizing them in a significant way. But let's keep her moving, see who else jumps off the board. Hendon Hooker finally goes to the Jets. Oh, baby, in the 4th round. I wouldn't hate that. The Panthers select Rashawn Johnson in the 4th round. He might be a really nice, that would be a landing spot plus for Rashawn Johnson. I would like that for him to land on the Panthers. I mean, who else is he going to really compete with? Chuba Hubbard? I think Chuba Hubbard is beatable. And Hubbard, had 4th or 5th round draft capital himself a couple years ago. So no, I don't hate that. That landing spot, Rashawn Johnson to the Panthers. Trey Palmer out of Nebraska, an 83 receiving grade, a 12.3 drop rate. Yikes. I mean, teams who will notice high drop rates, they're especially going to pay attention to how are they doing in the catching drills at the combine. Have these players the perceived improvement translated into the combine in that limited amount? So we'll see if Trey Palmer can do that, but that's certainly a red flag. Sean Tucker, look, doesn't even get an 80 rushing or an overall grade. He gets an 85.8 rushing grade, but not even an 80 total grade. 204 carries, 43 fewer carries in the same amount of games played for Sean Tucker. Yeah, I think if he gets round 4 draft capital, it'll matter about landing spot. I think this is the clear Tyler Algier corollary. If an okay running back in college gets a real nice landing spot, then you should be attacking that, but in your drafts. But if a player like Sean Tucker or Zach Evans ends up landing like an Isaiah Spiller landed on the Chargers, where it was clearly Austin Eckler, and there were reasons why these players were falling to the day 3, then we have to be concerned. We have to be concerned. So Zach Evans as well, out of Mississippi, an 80.8 rushing grade, sure, but a 77 overall grade, only 12 receptions on the season. That's at least he was picking it up a little bit near the end. We saw some 83s and 76 rushing grades near the end. But I really do like to see if I am evaluating a player, I want to see them improve over the course of the season and over the course of their seasons total. And while there is some wiggle room to go down from 85 to 77.3, that's not like a green flag that they're getting worse in their rushing grade or an overall grade. So yeah, let's keep it moving. Let's finish off this draft. We're so close. We see Zach Evans go off. Iosova, senior out of Princeton, wide receiver, goes to the Giants. The Giants really attack offense in this draft, I suppose. They do need some help. Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina goes to the Panthers. Marvin Mims goes to the Chiefs. And yeah, there we go. Full results. Oh, hey, let's see. Musgrave was a little bit of stretch. That's fine. I got an overall draft of an A. Let's take it. And then just to recap. Oh, I guess I missed that. I misclicked. Nevertheless, so if you want to go back to the mock draft simulator, you can do that. Select whichever teams you'd like to do it for, however many rounds you want to simulate, and whether you want it to be fast or slow, change some of the settings. You can even edit the draft order if you want. Okay. You can draft as all 32 teams if you want. This is a fun little exercise. And here's the thing is that some GMs actually use mock draft data. And you're saying, wait, Bradley, GMs use mock draft data? Yes, they reportedly do. There was an interview that was done just recently where one of the GMs came out and said they use the mock draft data, but not for what the public thinks that they should do. It doesn't influence their thoughts in that way. Instead, it is free manufactured scenario creation, because the teams have done their evaluations on players already. So they want to know, if they draft this player at this spot or don't draft this player at this spot, where could they see that player go off later? In what scenario? And so they do pay attention to those trends, not for player evaluation or market evaluation them itself, but will this player be available to us later? How many times has this been simulated? Are these reputable simulations? So these are things that matter to the NFL community, but probably not in the ways that we expected them. All right. So that was a lot of fun tonight. I do mock draft Monday every Monday, and I'm going to continue to do so until, I don't know, I get sick and tired of the moniker. But this is a lot of fun. I appreciate all of you jumping in, and hopefully this was a little enlightening, giving you a better idea of where some of these top 4 round draft capital rookies are expected to go and land draft capital wise. And also I chatted a little bit about landing spot too. There was some wonkiness. The Giants got out of control in this draft, but if it was set at 0 randomness, maybe I have to do that for another draft, but just a little bit of randomness in this one. The Giants, for those just tuning in, drafted Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. So nevertheless, this is a lot of fun. I'm going to do a best ball draft with y'all later this week. I think I'm going to have, I think I'll bring on my friend Felix Castro, who was a best ball DraftKings million winner. He was a millionaire winner last year. There's a lot of fun drafting with him earlier in the off season, this past off season, and also having him come on and spend some time doing some start sits with me during the season as well. Felix is a great friend. Appreciate him willing to jump on the live stream here in a couple days. I think that's going to be Thursday, but maybe I'll throw in another draft in between then. Who knows? All right, everybody. Till then, have a great one. Until next time, good luck in the best ball streets.
I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. I embrace all this risk, I'm insane.